1. The Dark Souls series. Often used as the measuring stick of in-game difficulty, or as a redundant and irrelevant comparison point, it's like the Dark Souls of blah blah. Dark Souls has had an undeniable impact on the world of role-playing games. Just look at games like The Surge, Lords of the Fallen and even Darksiders 3, which sought to imitate the Dark Souls formula, to mixed success. With Dark Souls Remastered, Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin and Dark Souls 3 all available on the Xbox One, all three games should keep you occupied for a long time, even if that's purely because the bosses keep kicking your ass. Plus, if you really feel like torturing yourself, you can play the Xbox 360 version of DS1 through backwards compatibility, and watch the framerate die as soon as you reach Blighttown. 2. The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt. What more is there to say about The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt, potentially one of the greatest games ever made, that hasn't been said already? Hopefully at least another paragraph and a half for the benefit of this article. It's probably fair to assume that most people reading this list on the best Xbox One RPGs have played The Witcher 3 already, but for the benefit for the 5 to 6 of you who haven't, here goes. In The Witcher 3, you play as a silver-haired sex pest who spends the majority of the game shagging his way up and down the land, occasionally taking a break to fight monsters and, on even rarer instances, engage with the main plot. Geralt's journey is incredibly absorbing, though don't be surprised if you abandon your adventuring days to become the greatest Gwent player in the land. 3. Divinity Original Sin 2. The closest you'll get to a Dungeons & Dragons campaign in video game form, Divinity Original Sin 2 allows you so much freedom in the way you tackle its various quests. Depending on the character you play as and the choices you make, one playthrough could be wildly different from another, making it a highly replayable experience. The epic adventure from Larian Studios can also be tackled with up to 4 players, making it infinitely better than AD and AMP-D campaign because you don't need to have everyone gathered in one place. Organizational troubles have been the death of many a tabletop playing group, but those issues are lessened when all you have to do is log on and play Divinity from the comfort of your own home. 4. Lost Odyssey. Told you we'd using backwards compatibility for this list, and why wouldn't we? Lost Odyssey was an Xbox 360 exclusive JRPG that still holds up to this day, especially if you're a fan of old-school, turn-based combat. Created by Hironobu Sakaguchi, creator of the Final Fantasy series, Lost Odyssey is an RPG experience that spanned 4 discs when it originally launched over 10 years ago. Now it's the size of a normal modern game, so it's hard to argue that it wasn't somewhat ahead of its time. With a strategic battle system where you controlled the formation of your party in battle, using the frontline characters to protect the backline, quick-time events that could boost your attacks and differences in how characters learn abilities depending on if they were mortal or not, Lost Odyssey had plenty of depth and nuance to distinguish itself from other RPGs. 5. The Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim Special Edition. Hey, it's that one that got ported to everything under the sun. We're still waiting for the inevitable announcement from Todd Howard that Skyrim will finally be playable on scientific calculators, disrupting maths classes up and down the land. Still, there's a reason Bethesda keep pressing the "re-release Skyrim" button. It's really bloody good. With hundreds of hours of quests, DLC content, dungeons and discoveries to make, there's always something new to find when playing Skyrim, even if that something new is actually doing the main quest. Because who cares about that when there's guilds to join and treasures to find? Still, if Skyrim was a bit too streamlined for you hardcore players, just remember that Oblivion and Morrowind are both backwards compatible. 6. Fallout 3 and AMP-4 and AMP-New Vegas. Pretty much a delete as appropriate entry here, as all 3 of these action RPG games have their own unique values and subtleties that make them worthwhile in their own way. If you've never picked up a Fallout game before, Fallout 4 is probably the best place to start as it does more to accommodate newer players. However, series veterans will want to use the backwards compatibility feature of the Xbox One to revisit both Fallout 3 and New Vegas. Though Fallout 3 was the series' remarkable debut foray into the world of first-person RPG action, it's New Vegas that many consider to be the pinnacle of the series, and I'd agree. It has the best story, best setting and best characters. 7. Final Fantasy XV, and all the rest. Possibly the byword for RPG quality, Final Fantasy is a goddamn institution unto itself at this point. Even if you're not the biggest RPG fan, Practically everyone has at least played one iteration of the series at some point in their lives. But for those looking for a great place to start, Final Fantasy XV is an ideal jumping-on point, as you control Noctis and his friends as they embark on the greatest road trip ever. Also, they might just save the world, if they can stop getting distracted by impromptu fishing trips anyway. Of course, Final Fantasy XV isn't the only game in the series available on the Xbox One, as the Final Fantasy XIII series is available via backwards compatibility, while Final Fantasy VII HD, Final Fantasy VIII Remastered, Final Fantasy IX HD, Final Fantasy X Remastered and Final Fantasy XV, the Zodiac Age are all available right now. There should be enough there to keep you going for about 500+ hours. 8. Diablo 3: Eternal Collection. Top-down action RPGs don't get more iconic than Diablo, and Diablo 3 could arguably be the best version of that. At the very least, if you're a console player, it'll be the only version for you, but that's not to say you've been given a bum deal. Not in the slightest. In fact, Diablo 3: Eternal Collection is bursting with replayable content that never fails to entertain. With multiple character classes to choose from, including Barbarian, Wizard and Monk, along with the Necromancer if you pick up the Eternal Collection, buy the DLC, up to 17 difficulty settings that ensure there's always tougher prey to hunt and co-op play for up to 4 players, Diablo 3 has the potential to hold your attention until the end of time. 9. South Park: The Fractured But Whole. A slightly more non-traditional RPG for you here, in the sense that it's a South Park game, so it's about as crude as you could get. South Park: The Fractured But Whole is Trey Parker and Matt Stone's attempt at lampooning the world of superhero franchises. Though TFBW would draw most of its attention from the storyline and writing, there's a brilliant RPG system lying underneath. With a grid-based battle system, fights in South Park: The Fractured But Whole contain more of a strategic element than other games on this list of the best Xbox One RPGs. It's not just which weapons or spells you use, but how you position your party that'll give you the win. Then again, if that doesn't work, just fart on everything and you'll be fine. 10. Kingdom Come: Deliverance. One for the hardcore here, as Kingdom Come: Deliverance is designed for those who enjoy the medieval world but hate it when they get attacked by dragons or other big monsters. Kingdom Come: Deliverance is more focused on giving the player a more authentic historical world to explore. Well, about as authentic as it could get before the game starts glitching out. At least it's been patched since then. With a story of revenge playing out over the backdrop of political intrigue in 15th-century Bohemia. You control Henry as he seeks to find his father's killer and recover a stolen family heirloom. That said, this is an RPG after all, so you'll probably spend more than your fair share of time forgetting about the main quest and getting rat-arsed with a priest. 11. Dragon Age: Inquisition. From the non-fantasy open-world RPG to the very much fantasy open-world RPG, Dragon Age: Inquisition is the third installment of the popular Dragon Age franchise. With perhaps one of the richest worlds and lore in gaming, Inquisition is filled with wonderful sights to see, creatures to murder and, perhaps most importantly, people to shag. Can't spell BioWare without romance options, right? As the Inquisitor, it's your job to close the breach, which is unleashing demon hordes upon the world of Thetis, which naturally means getting distracted by the side quests and leaving Thetis to its fate. With the first 2 Dragon Age games also available via backwards compatibility, you've got hundreds of hours of adventuring ahead of you, even if you feel like skipping the second one. 12. Tales of Vesperia: Definitive Edition. Everything old is new again. Just look at the brilliant Resident Evil 2 remake, and Tales of Vesperia: Definitive Edition proves that even JRPGs from over a decade ago can still hang tough with modern offerings. As for what Tales of Vesperia offers, you better have a spare 100 hours if you even think about finishing this monster of a game. With a joyous narrative that touches on themes of self-confidence and finding your place in the world, coupled with accessible and enjoyable combat that offers plenty of hidden depth, this is definitely one for any RPG fans list. Even if you've already played the original game, the content added in the Definitive Edition ensures there'll be something new for you to discover. 13. Monster Hunter World: Iceborne. Capcom took a big risk when deciding to bring Monster Hunter World to the West. Aside from its debut, the series never found itself on home consoles outside of Japan, but its release on 3DS managed to build a solid footing over here. One super successful console launch later and the Monster Hunter fanbase has increased exponentially, and it's not hard to see why. Monster Hunter World streamlined the core experience of the series, making it more friendly and approachable for new players, while retaining the same depth and hunt difficulty that the series was known for. For series newcomers, World represented the perfect jumping-on point for the game, while veterans could point to it and say, "Look, we told you Monster Hunter was worth it." The Iceborne DLC has improved the overall package even further, adding new locations, monsters and abilities, making for the most complete Monster Hunter ever made. 14. Destiny 2. Shadowkeep. Bungie's looter shooter often divides opinion, with some swearing by Destiny, its gameplay loop and the notion that it's one of the most well put together shooters of the current generation. Meanwhile, others decry it as boring, or that it lacks essential content before falling over themselves to buy the next piece of DLC whenever it comes out. You know who you are. The current Destiny 2 package includes the base game and 2 mid-size DLC packs that added a small series of missions each, along with Forsaken and Shadowkeep, each offering an entire campaign's worth of content. On top of that, the additional post-game raids, PvP and other modes make Destiny 2. Shadowkeep one you'll keep coming back to, even if you say you won't. 15. Mass Effect, the whole series. The sci-fi trilogy that couldn't quite close it out, then added another game in the series just for good measure. Mass Effect has left an indelible mark on the world of video games, even if that mark is just conversation wheels. In all seriousness though, Mass Effect felt like one of the first real moments where your moral choices had any kind of bearing on the storyline, and it felt great. But it wasn't all storyline and choices. Over the course of the series, Mass Effect refined its gameplay mechanics more and more, with the third game offering the best blend of tight cover shooting and RPG leveling in the entire franchise. Of course, you can find this out for yourself, as the whole series is available to play on Xbox One via backwards compatibility. That said, if you want an improved version, Mass Effect Legendary Edition compiles Mass Effect from 1 to 3 into one handy package. 16. Kingdom Hearts. Initially, it was weird to see Kingdom Hearts 3 launch onto the Xbox One without any hint of the previous games joining the Big Green brand, but now Kingdom Hearts, HD 1.5 and AMP. Plus 2.5 Remix and Kingdom Hearts 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue are available on Xbox, so you've got an entire series ready to play. The entire series offers a unique but engaging blend between Disney colorful intellectual properties and Square Enix's penchant for brooding anime protagonists. It's a bit of a trip, but considering you can finally play through every single experience on the Xbox, it'd be rude not to. 17. Code Vein. We might have brought up the emergence of the "it's like Dark Souls" comparison at the top of this article, but play Code Vein and tell me it isn't anime Dark Souls. The gameplay formula and focus on exploration shares a lot of similarities with From Software's seminal work, but Code Vein has enough bright ideas of its own to warrant an inclusion on this list. The constant presence of an AI partner, which can be subbed out for a real partner via online co-op, makes for a more forgiving overall experience, and the simplified leveling up and blood code system allows Souls-like newcomers to introduce themselves to the genre. On top of that, the character creator alone is versatile enough to make Code Vein worth playing. 18. Black Desert. RPGs are timesinks at the best of times, but MMORPGs can almost feel like a black hole of time. Just a quick go can turn into hours and hours of play, grinding quests for EXP. While console MMOs never quite have the same level of success, the best offering on Xbox One would have to be Black Desert. With another in-depth character creator, Black Desert boasts a control scheme that feels right at home on the controller, which is an area where most MMORPGs on console fail. As plenty of free updates roll out, with more classes, locations and endgame level content, Black Desert on Xbox One becomes more and more of a tantalizing prospect. 19. Nier. Automata. Become as Gods Edition. Not only one of the best RPGs ever made, but arguably one of the best games of the current generation, Nier. Automata is nothing short of a triumph. While the narrative can often take a back seat in RPGs, Nier. Automata keeps it front and center, with every event and quest in the game adding something to the overall story, world and characters of Nier. Without giving away too much for those who haven't played it yet, you control 2B, an android locked in an endless war with a race of machine lifeforms, but perhaps not all is as it seems. While the story and writing is top-notch, it'd be nothing without the stellar gameplay that Platinum Games is known for, creating a beautiful action RPG blend. 20. Yakuza 0. Ryu ga Gotoku Studios' masterpiece of a series has long been considered to be a PS4 exclusive. But the franchise has made its way to PC already, and now, after a long wait, it's now available on the Xbox One in the form of prequel entry Yakuza 0. Playing as both longtime series protagonist Kazuma Kiryu, along with the nuisance Goro Majima as another protagonist, it's up to you to navigate the world of the Yakuza during the height of 80s Japan. With fantastic combat and dozens of hours of content, Yakuza 0 is definitely worth checking out, especially considering it's available on Xbox Game Pass. While Yakuza 0 is the series at its best, the rest of Yakuza, including Like a Dragon, are all available on Xbox too. 21. Dragon Ball Z. Kakarot. The Dragon Ball series is one of the most well-known and instantly recognizable anime, manga franchises in the world, so it makes sense that there'd be a series of games to accompany it, though none are arguably as in-depth as Dragon Ball Z. Kakarot. A faithful recreation of the biggest story arcs and beats from the series, Kakarot's action RPG formula might be immediately familiar to anyone who's played fellow games like Xenoverse, but it's still quite enjoyable. Fans of the series will get a kick out of seeing their favorite moments revisited, while newcomers could consider this to be a best of Cliff Notes version. 22. The Outer Worlds. For those who played Fallout, New Vegas and screamed more, please, The Outer Worlds is Obsidian's solo outing for a first-person RPG. Taking place in the far-flung star system of Halcyon, you control a colonist awoken from cryosleep to find an oppressive, capitalist corporation making life miserable for all they control. The key selling point for The Outer Worlds is that you're given a large amount of freedom in how you choose to tackle missions, whether that's with words, threats or force. You're free to approach problems as you see fit, even if that means putting a bullet between the eyes of everyone you encounter. No one said you have to be a good person. 23. Slay the Spire. Deck-building indie games seem to be all the rage at the moment, and there are few which are better than Slay the Spire, a card-based RPG where your job is to, well, slay the Spire. Sounds simple enough, right? Wrong. Prepare to get your head caved in over and over again. Slay the Spire blends deck-building with roguelike elements to create a single-player experience that's truly unique every time you play. With a randomly generated spire that can offer safe or risky paths, coupled with hundreds of cards with which to craft your deck, you'll be playing this one for a long time. 24. The Division 2 Warlords of New York. While The Division might not have been the most well-received looter-shooter, the game certainly improved once more content updates had launched. The Division 2 kicked off right where the first game left off, with a host of content out of the gate and more dropping in the year since its launch. The most recent expansion, Warlords of New York, takes players back from the streets of Washington, D.C. and transports them to New York, setting of the first game, in an effort to capture a rogue agent. With plenty of PvE and PvP modes, and dozens of hours worth of fantastic third-person cover shooting gameplay, The Division 2 Warlords of New York is absolutely worth your time. 25. Disco Elysium. The most recent addition on this list, Disco Elysium has been available for some time on PC and PlayStation, but after a lengthy period, the subversive RPG is finally available on the Xbox as the final cut, which includes a host of new content and quality-of-life improvements to make the experience better for console players. As an amnesiac detective living in a city suffering from the aftereffects of war, you investigate a murder that's related to an ongoing dispute. Along the way, your character amasses a thought cabinet that represents the disparate aspects of your fractured personality, which determine how you respond and interact with characters and the world at large. As an RPG, it's one of the meatiest, but also one of the most innovative. 26. The Forgotten City. For a game that began its life as an ambitious Skyrim mod, The Forgotten City has sure come a long way, arguably now recognized as one of the top games of 2021. Set in a small, hidden Roman city, you control a time traveler who has to solve a mystery surrounding why everyone keeps dying. With the ability to exploit time to create a time loop, you'll use various means with which to solve the mystery surrounding this city. Sure, there's combat, but that'll only get you so far, meaning you'll have to use social skills, wits and a bit of subterfuge to reach your answers. 27. Hades. Alright, So Hades is a roguelike by nature, so its appearance on this list might raise a few eyebrows. But Hades is undoubtedly the most RPG of all the roguelikes, thanks to its focus on permanent upgrades between runs encouraging progression. Sure, there's an element of randomness between runs, but those additional upgrades make the world of difference. Hades sees players take on the role of Zagreus, son of the titular Greek god of the dead, trying to escape from the underworld by venturing through various regions and chambers. After each attempt, players can upgrade their abilities and weapons to make the next run that much easier. 28. Cyberpunk 2077. It's not unknown that Cyberpunk 2077 was a bit of a mess upon launch, but it's also been improved and updated since then, making the game actually enjoyable now. Sure, it might not be the world-conquering open-world RPG that it was hyped up to be before launch, but there's plenty to love here. Playing as created character V, you explore the sprawling metropolis that is Night City, completing questlines and establishing relationships with different criminal elements and other factions that call this dystopia home. Also, Keanu Reeves is in it. Enough said. 29. Yes, Your Grace. RPGs don't have to be world-conquering adventures where you play as badass heroes. Sometimes, the role-playing is a lot more subdued, yet still incredibly enjoyable. Yes, Your Grace fills that second gap, offering a core gameplay loop that's incredibly simplistic and utterly compelling. You control a king who is holding an open court to listen to his subjects, but with resources limited and a huge battle looming, you have to manage the expectations of your kingdom alongside your relationship with your family and the other lords that occupy the land. Keeping everyone happy certainly won't be easy. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe on my channel. And write in comments what is your favorite RPG games on Xbox.